Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings. You're tuned in to the Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks, where we talk about life, love, and business.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided thee right, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judges, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who in my judgment is the master historian, taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher. History is most attractive. Why should history be most attractive? Because history is the recorded time of the human family in its struggle to overcome obstacles. There is no life that is without struggle. The Holy Quran teaches us that man, meaning man and woman, is made to face difficulties. And after difficulty comes ease. But it is history that guides us through difficulty. For if you know how people who had difficulty yesterday got through, and if your difficulty is somewhat similar, then today we also can get through if we follow the guidance of history. This is why Carter G. Woodson and many of our black giants fought for black people to know our history. Because in not knowing our history, we don't have a guide. And without a guide, we are lost. No wonder the Bible...
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto each and every one of you. Welcome to the Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks, where we talk about life, love, and business. And today, not only do we celebrate the birth anniversary of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we're going to talk about him a little bit. We're also in episode 4 of our Proper Handling of People series. So, welcome, welcome to the show. I hope you all that are fasting, I hope it's going well. Let's see, I see some of y'all popping in the chat already. Thank you, Sister Betty. Great morning to you as well. Peace and blessings. Walaikum salam and happy Savior's Day, Brother Victor. And Roz Noah, walaikum salam. Thank you, thank you. I see some of y'all being shy. Wasn't that a beautiful Fajr prayer we had this morning? I'm just grateful for those types of mornings and those types of special prayers. So it's just wonderful. So as I mentioned, today is the birth anniversary of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he's honorable to us. He's the most honorable to us because he encompasses so much. And one of my favorite sources to quote when I'm asked, who is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is a very basic but profound and divine short summary on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's an article written by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that was republished in the Final Call newspaper June 14th, 2016. It's only appropriate that I share this today on this special day. This article is so good, not only because of the thorough truth that it contains, but because of the practicality of the truth. Let me share with you what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan wrote. Okay. Y'all got y'all tea or coffee? I got some chai this morning. I'm fasting, so this chai feels like breakfast to me right now. All right. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said, is indeed a true friend of the Black man and woman because his message is as relevant today as it was when he was physically among us. And let me add, right? We are in episode 4 of the proper handling of people based on what he taught us in terms of how to handle one another in our leadership and building and growth development stages. And it's as relevant today as it was in the 60s when he put this was put together by him. It's as relevant today, so relevant that we're adapting it over to us as conscious entrepreneurs. So he is indeed a true, I'll continue with the minister's words. He is indeed a true friend of the Black man and woman because his message is as relevant today as it was when he was physically among us. He worked, suffered, studied, and constantly prayed for our rise. He sacrificed his own personal life to devote 44 years to the rise of our people. He single-handedly, with tenaciousness of will and singleness of purpose, turned the language of America from the use of the word Negro, which means something dead, lifeless, or hard, into seeing ourselves as Black people, members of the original nation of the earth. He turned our hearts towards Africa and our brothers and sisters in the isles of the Pacific, Central, South America, and the Caribbean. His wisdom showed us the connection between the Native Americans and their membership in the Aboriginal nation of the earth. He, more than any other religious leader, is responsible for causing us to refer to one another as brothers and sisters. He caused new levels of scholarship in the research of the history of the Black man and into the nature and birth record of the Caucasian. He inspired research into melanin and its presence or absence, and its effect on the thought process. And let me add this. If you understand what's going on in healthcare, there's so many studies that have been initiated as a result of his inspiration. So the minister goes on to say, he taught us how to eat to live, causing us to throw away medicines. His teachings on this subject began the process of the beautification of our people, no matter how ugly we may have appeared to be. He started the process of reformation of the Black woman, without which there can be no new people. He showed us the value of proper education and established a school system that reflected the same. He demonstrated the proper use of money by establishing for his followers farmland, banks, business, airplanes, and airport facilities, international trade and commerce. And I'll add my part here. You all know we talk about here on this show how that became an economic blueprint, and we've been busy unraveling and tweaking and applying that blueprint to our business development efforts. I'll continue. The minister went on to say, you name it, he did it. What a friend we have in Jesus, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There is not a Black leader who has not been positively affected by this man and his message. Without his boldness at the time, would Reverend Jackson dare to speak as he does and run for president? Did y'all know that Jesse Jackson ran for president? Without his forthrightness in confronting this government for her evil done to Black people, would any of us have the courage to do the same today? Would you not admit he laid the foundation and opened the way? What more could a man who loves you do? But what has been your response to such a friend? The response of many who knew him has been to use his knowledge, but to deny him, to advance self because of him, but never give him credit. In an edition of Ebony magazine, under the byline, some of y'all don't know what Ebony magazine, but it was a magazine put out by Johnson Publishing, and Ebony and Jet magazine was a staple in our households in the 60s and 70s and a little bit of the 80s. But the minister says, in an edition of Ebony magazine under the byline of Lerone Bennett, 17 historians had gotten together and picked the 50 most important figures in Black American history. And the persons who chose these names were considered by Ebony magazine as experts. Yet, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was not mentioned. Why? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad's student, Malcolm X, was mentioned. Would there have been a Malcolm X if there was no Elijah Muhammad? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad influenced the writings of James Baldwin, Amiri Baraka, Maya Angelou, John Killens, Louis Lomax, and most of the writers who were popular in the 1960s. His influence is seen today in the writings of Toni Morrison and Alex Haley. His teachings inspired Alex Haley to do the research that led to the book Roots. He influenced playwrights, poets, musicians. There is no field of human endeavor among Black people that Elijah Muhammad did not have some positive effect on. And now there is a conscious effort to write the Honorable Elijah Muhammad out of history. However, the minister speaking, I am sure that by the help of God, everyone who plans to write him out of history has already assigned to themselves that chastisement. There would be no Louis Farrakhan if there were no Elijah Muhammad. There would be no Muhammad Ali if there were no Elijah Muhammad. The money that Sugar Ray Leonard, Eddie Murphy, Bill Cosby, and others are making is due to the presence of a new reality in America, the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It is sad that so many former followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have helped knowingly or unknowingly to write this man out of history. The minister says, I remember in October of 1974, sitting with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his bedroom. As he sat on the side of the bed, a great sadness came over his face, and he said, brother, in the future, when my name is mentioned, they will say, oh, that man, his teachings was good for yesterday, but it is not good today. The minister says, I remember talking with him the day after 40,000 people came to Randall's Island on a Sunday to hear a lecture given by me, a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in September of 1974. This followed an event that attracted 70,000 people in May of that same year. The minister says that as I spoke with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad by telephone, I was talking of what a great event we had and how it looked like we were going to capture New York. And he said to me with incredible accuracy, Oh, brother, the day will soon come when you will go to the mosque and you will not find a believer there other than yourself. That day did come because I believe in Elijah Muhammad, who was, this is the minister talking, who was the foundation of these mosques. I was not even permitted to enter the mosque that I had been blessed and guided by God through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to help rebuild after the assassination of Malcolm X and the subsequent bombing of the mosques. This is sad indeed. In a book titled 100 Most Influential Men in the History of the World, the number one man of influence was Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, of Arabia. Third in influence was Jesus. Sixth in influence was Paul. And it is said that the only reason Jesus is known today is largely because of the work of Paul. By the help and power of Allah God, the minister says, I will not leave this earth until the whole world knows of the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and his opposition is buried in the vile dust of ignominy from which they sprang. Every one of us who has been touched by him should and must rise up and declare his name to the ends of the earth. We who have benefited from him and his message must do as the Holy Quran 21, Surah 21, verses 17 through 18 instructs. Had we wished to take a pastime, we would have taken it from before ourselves. By no means would we do so. Nay, we hurl the truth against falsehood, so it knocks out its brains, and lo, it vanishes. And woe to you for what you describe. Think over Black leaders getting together to attempt in the name of cultural maturity to undo the knowledge brought to us by God in person for the salvation of our people. We will not permit this to happen. We will challenge you in every forum. We will drive you from every speaker stand. You will not get away with your malicious wickedness against a true friend. Allah God will turn those whom you think are your friends against you, and he will bring a chastisement upon this people and nation, a chastisement the like of which has never visited a people in the annals of history. Since you wish extinction for a true friend, then perhaps Allah God will give you what you wish for him. That was written by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We're going to go to commercial and we'll come right back and start on our proper handling of people series episode 4. Be right back. See you on the other side.
You belong to yourself. You're an independent people, created from the nation of free people.
Yes, sir.
You don't need to go nowhere but to yourself.
Yes, sir.
There will be a great separation.
Yes, sir.
So I said, it is on now.
The college is meant to prepare you for your future. That the time dictates that if we don't do something for ourselves as a people, we will be destroyed. And the aim of the enemy right now is to take us out.
We have God with us. We have Him as our guide. Yes, sir. We don't have to stand around here and ask the question, what must be done? Yes, sir. Get up and let's go and do something. Yes, sir. We cannot lay down. Yes, sir. We must get up. Yes, sir. And go to work.
Do you know what real joy is in life? Visioning something and bringing it into reality. That's real joy. Do you know what the next step in joy is? Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in unity.
Tonight, you need to fasten your seatbelts. We're going to hear from some of the greatest minds in the world. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of trusting our future and the future of our children into the hands of those who don't love us. I believe we need to revitalize black leadership.
All right, we're back. I'm your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, and you're tuned into the Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks, where we talk about life, love, and business. And just a little bit about me, in case y'all don't know me. I'm an international business and real estate developer and consultant and an urban historic preservationist. Listen, part of what I believe I was put on this earth to do is to spread love, to preserve our history, and to help us build this nation, to help us build businesses and do for self. The mission of my brand is to help those of us in marginalized communities to become happier, healthier, wealthier, and to experience more love. One of the methods includes doing for self, thinking for ourselves, and not being afraid to infuse spirituality into business. I've spent my entire life in business. I'm pretty good in the world of business. I've built and managed over $500 million in projects and professional business endeavors, both in the corporate world and a few for myself. I recently added new services to my portfolio that include work in the preservation and hospitality industry. And my greatest venture is the development of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House Museum and the renovation and restoration of his former home. We are working towards the completion of the museum. The finish line is in sight, and we are in a fundraising phase of the project, and we hope that you would donate today. To become a sponsor, just send us an email, sajdahhouse@gmail.com. Can somebody put that in the chat for me? To become a sponsor, send an email to sajdahhouse@gmail.com. If you want to purchase a commemorative Elijah coin, you see that scrolling across the bottom there. Just go to sajdahhouse.com. And if you want to make a donation, you can do that in two ways, right? You can go to sajdahhousedonations.com, or you can use Cash App. That's $Sajdah Enterprise. Okay. All right. So let's get into chapter 4 of the proper handling of people, as taught to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that I'm adapting for us as conscious entrepreneurs and emerging leaders. What resonated with me about this section of the proper handling of people was how to be an assistant. And that little phrase just came alive for me, because I realized that being an assistant involves having good decision-making skills, because few bosses want people assisting them who can't make decisions. So many of us are so busy studying on how to be a boss. I'm a boss. I'm a boss. Everybody want to boss up. But if you can't be a good assistant, did you know you can't really be a good boss? Ha, newsflash, right? See, you cannot be a good boss if you don't know how to be a good assistant. Why? Because a boss, some people look at it in such an elementary way. A boss just don't mean you just boss people around, right? A boss means that you are what? Assisting people. So if you have a company, you're assisting customers with a product or service that you're introducing. If you are in the service industry, you're assisting your clients, your customers. If you're the leader in an organization, a church, a sorority, a mosque, a temple, a nonprofit organization, you are assisting the constituency based on the mission of your organization. So you can't be a good boss if you don't know how to be of service. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about people who play the role of assistant per se. I'm talking about learning how to properly assist somebody. See, as a boss, you are in essence the biggest assistant in the company or organization. The boss is of service to the corporation. The boss is in essence an assistant to someone who assists them. See, many of us are so caught up in being a boss that we're thinking about the ranking. Do you know something? And I've been blessed to reach out and speak on the phone to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on a number of occasions. And the first thing he says when he gets on the phone is, "How may I be of service?" What a wonderful example. But you see, we're thinking about it in a very narrow sense because, on the pure definition of assistant, which is a person who ranks below a senior person, we think, oh, that's about ego. I ain't trying to be your assistant. But it ain't. Take it out of that context and understand that your role is to be of assistance. The only reason why we here is to serve God. Whether we want to or not, we serving him. And when he's done with us of service here on this earth, he just ends it. Somebody gave me a quote today, what was it, Thursday, where our beloved sister minister Ava Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with her, said, the only reason why we're here is because we're on God's mind. So the first thing an assistant does is figures out what the people they are assisting needs. First thing you should be doing as a boss is figuring out, what do the people around you or who elected you or put you in position or who work for you what do they need? And a good assistant assesses the needs of the people. They make sure that they understand the strengths and weaknesses so they can figure out how to be of service. I could go on and on and on about this. I meet so many of us, especially as Black people in business, because our approach to business is an after effect of the trauma that we've been through. See, we've been under this tyrannical group of people for so many years who have been abusing us and preying upon us. And so when we become a boss, we think, okay, I ain't gonna be nobody's assistant. I'm going to tell folks what to do. I'm in charge. But we get frustrated, and we frustrated business people because we so focused on being a boss, and we don't know that if you take your focus off of being a boss and focus on being an assistant, you'll be successful almost overnight. So let's talk about the 8 characteristics of a good assistant, with the understanding that as bosses, we need to have these characteristics as well. I hope y'all doing okay here. I see everybody here in the chat. All right. Y'all make sure y'all stay active and type some of this stuff in. Here are the 8 characteristics of a good assistant. And keep in mind again, if you take your brain off of trying to be a boss and put your mind into the concept of being a good assistant. And a good assistant does not mean that you some sycophant, that you run around and get slapped around and get dogged out. But you cannot learn how to be a good boss until you become a good assistant. Number 1 of these 8 characteristics, you have to be loyal. Period, point blank. A good assistant is loyal to the organization and to their executive. If you struggle to prioritize tasks that come from your executive against tasks that come from somewhere else in the organization, then you're not being loyal. You have to be loyal. See, the worst thing that can happen is, and I've seen this in organizations, I've been a victim of this. You're a leader in an organization, but your staff or the people under you, or maybe the people working with you, are not loyal. So what they do is you give an instruction, and then somebody else comes along and makes a suggestion, and then they go with what that person is saying. Or all of a sudden they get derailed because that person gave them an instruction. That is the quickest way to tear down an organization. If nothing else, you go back to the executive. And if you have to say, I just wanted to share with you some additional intelligence that I received, you can do that. But to get derailed because of another assignment is the absolute worst. So you're sitting here as a boss and you give an assignment and you think that the person's going to go and fulfill the assignment because you have other downstream decisions and things that you need to do as a result of this one part of the assignment getting done. Well, if that person over here doesn't do their assignment, then all your other downstream stuff gets impacted. This is the way in which, when you talk about corporate warfare, this is how they end up tearing down businesses, because if they can cut you off where the people don't follow your instructions, and then you start getting this creep in people morphing the instructions and people changing language and people changing the focus and people changing the processes. Next thing you know, your company doesn't represent, or your organization doesn't represent you. It's something else. And that little degree shift can make all the difference in your results. We'll talk about that later on down the line. The second characteristic is the assistant must anticipate the needs. There's, I have it, you can't see it, but behind me, what my staff gave me one time at the hospital, gave me a little plaque that said, chess, not checkers. Because I was always saying to them, listen, we are playing chess. We're not playing checkers. You need to think 5 or 6 steps ahead. So don't just think about this next move. Think about what that move could be and try to anticipate not only the moves of your opponent, but the needs of people as you begin to move forward and march forward in your business. Let me go quicker through these. Number 3, you have to be organized. I always say to people, project manage yourself. That's what I do. I have lists, I have calendars, but I project manage myself. That's how I keep up with so much stuff. You have to be flexible. You have to be willing. And let me say something about flexibility. Some people are so rigid that they miss what's going on around them. They lose the impact of their business and their message because they're so rigid. You got to be able to flow like water, keeping the true consistency and the true elements of your business and your mission intact. But you got to be flexible. You got to be willing to push back. Okay? You can't just be a yes person. Pushback doesn't necessarily mean being disrespectful. You can ask questions. You have to be focused. You have to be friendly. And you have to be service oriented. All right, let me see how y'all doing in the chat. I see you, Leisha X. Thank you, ma'am. Wa alaikum salam. Welcome, welcome. All right, so now let's move into another big chunk of this section that is really important. And it's the art, I call it, the art of decision making. How to make decisions. See, part of our problem a lot of times, and why we are always under the control of somebody else's agenda, is because we don't know how to make decisions. A lot of us run away from the hard decisions. We run away from the grown decisions, right? We don't understand that it is really a true art. According to Psychology Today, when making a decision, we form opinions and choose actions via mental processes which are influenced by biases, reason, emotions, and memories. The simple act of deciding supports the notion that we have free will. We weigh the benefits and costs of our choice, and then we cope with the consequences. Factors that limit the ability to make good decisions include missing or incomplete information, urgent deadlines, and limited physical or emotional resources. Let me say something about that. One of the things I always tell people that work with me, I want the information. I don't care if it's good and I don't care if it's bad, because what might seem bad to you may be good to me, or it may be a bigger part of the puzzle, or it may allow me to tweak my strategy in just the right way. I call that having your hand on the noose, right? If my neck is in a noose, I at least want to be able to get both hands on it. So don't omit information from people. Work on being transparent and being open, and just work on how you deliver the message. I have friends that say to me, they say, you know what, sis, if I ever get bad information, I want it to come from you. Because if I get some information I need to share with somebody, I'm always thinking now 5 or 6 steps ahead. How can I help them to solve this problem? You want to make sure when you get information, when you're decision making or when you're analyzing something, that you don't get what I call scope creep. Some of us, when we're thinking of stuff, we reach too far. We're not mathematical, so we just come up with an idea and we go, oh yeah, that's what it is. So let's say you have an employee that didn't show up for work today. And maybe they didn't show up for work because they got really sick and they lost their voice, and they should have called in, but they didn't. What do? We say, oh, that's because they've been talking to, we come up with all this stuff. They've been talking to the competitor and they about to go work over there. Or, you know what, they tripping, they don't like me. Or they don't even care about this company. Or they don't like their employees. Or they planning on quitting. We come up with all this stuff when in fact the person had an accident and couldn't call in and couldn't reach out to you. So before you make a jump and before you attach all these emotions, get the facts. Get the complete information to the best of your ability. And when you're making that decision, understand what you're making that decision based upon. So in this section of it, it's talking about how to make a good decision. The first thing you have to do is define the problem exactly. Sometimes we have a big problem, right, that we need to break down into sub problems and then create our strategy that way. I call it the cake method. You don't eat the whole cake at once, you eat it bite by bite, right? So we have to define the problem exactly and clearly. What is the real problem and what are we really, really dealing with here? Number 2, you have to canvas all possibilities. Anybody who knows me, if you talk to me on the phone or you work with me in business, I'm pointing to my board over here that you all can't see, but I'm always writing out and putting together, what are the other possibilities? It's a technique that we learn and that I teach as a certified emotional intelligence coach, is I help people run through possibilities and then I help them deal with the emotions that come up as a result of the various different possibilities. If you want to book me as a coach, send me an email and I'll send you a link where you can get a session. And if you buy one session, I'll give you another session for free at no charge, just as a follow-up. But one of the biggest techniques that is really powerful is I will help you list out all the possibilities, even if you think it's a possibility that could never happen. See, oftentimes our decision-making is clouded by our fear of certain possibilities. Okay. But just by exploring those possibilities, and oftentimes your mindset will come up and be like, oh no, well, that ain't happening. And then you will begin to move through the process of creating a strategy that will determine the solution to the problem. So you want to canvas all possibilities. You want to sit with the emotions that arise as a result. So let's go back to our same example. We have an employee who didn't show up for work. They're in a critical position. You really needed them. You over here jumping to conclusions when in fact they had an accident and couldn't come in and couldn't call because maybe they're incapacitated for a minute. But we are thinking of all these other scenarios. What's the possibilities? What do I do? Okay, well, I could close the business for today because I don't have that person that is critical. I could jump in and roll up my sleeves and cover down. I can call someone else. I can call a temp agency. I can ask the other staff to kind of cover down. So as you're running through these possibilities, you're also looking to see, okay, For example, if I ask other staff members to cover down, what's going to happen? I know I'm working on a skeletal crew. What could be omitted? What do I tell them to focus on, even if they start being spread thin? I could jump in and roll up my sleeves. Well, what does that mean? That means that I may be missing something. A lot of bosses are afraid to jump in and let people see them get dirty. Sometimes it's a good thing. But remember to canvas all possibilities. Here's the third way to make a good decision. Compare and evaluate each solution. So when you come up with those possibilities, now you want to compare and evaluate. You want to analyze between the two. You want to weigh them out. And then number 4, you want to select the best parts of each. And then once you start to select the best parts of each, now number 5, you can implement your decision. Okay, so I'm just going to run through those quickly. How to make a good decision. Number 1, define the problem exactly. Number 2, canvas all possibilities. Number 3, compare and evaluate each solution. Number 4, select the best parts of each one. And number 5, implement the decision. Now, what are the types of decision making? When people are put in a familiar situation, their decisions are often fast and automatic based on long time experience with what works and what doesn't. However, when encountering a situation that they've never been in before, they have to take a little time to weigh the potential benefits and risks when choosing a course of action. They are more likely to make mistakes and face negative consequences. So this is something to think about. And this is a position that we are in most often, especially as Black entrepreneurs who come from marginalized communities where we're oftentimes the first to do just about anything. The first Black this, the first Black that, the first to open this, the first to live in this neighborhood, the first. And so we have to be very focused on decision making, because it's not necessarily a decision that we're making based upon a situation that is familiar with us. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to study. This is why I'm such a big proponent of studying history, and I'm huge on studying the history of business. I'm combing through some textbooks right now on the history of Black businesses in America, because I want to put this information out here and familiarize us with it, because it's going to help us with our decision-making process. Okay, so there's a such thing called an informed decision-making process. And that's the ability to think critically, okay? And that's really key to making any good decision. And you want to think critically without succumbing to common errors or biases. You want to take into consideration your bias. This means not just going with your gut, but rather figuring out what knowledge you lack and obtaining it. So your gut will tell you something, but what I encourage people is to follow up on the gut. If your gut is telling you, I think option 2 over here is the one that makes sense, then go to option 2 and dig into option 2. And when you look at all possible sources of information with an open mind, you can make an informed decision based on facts rather than on your intuition, which could be off, because your intuition or your gut could be making a decision for you based on fear, based on your past situations. That's why it's important to study. Because when you study these different scenarios and you tune in to podcasts like this, you're opening your mind. So now your gut or that feeling in your solar plexus has a bigger field from which to gather information. And as you become more spiritually in tune, this is why it's important not to throw away your spirituality in business. As we become more spiritually in tune, our professional intuition begins to strengthen, and we can more trust that gut feeling, because the more we work with it and we don't quiet that voice, we keep working with it and let it get strengthened and let it have more courage. See, the more information you have, sometimes the more courage you have, and then your gut will operate from that space. Let me know in the chat if that makes sense to you. Let's talk about some of the methods of good decision making. A satisfying approach to making good decisions involves settling for a good enough outcome, even if it's flawed. This is important for us as entrepreneurs, and I had to learn this. I came out of the corporate world where my performance was graded based upon how well I followed instructions. So I was a box checker. And if I followed instructions really well and made things as close to perfect, and perfect was defined by how much it aligned with the instructions. But that was a problem when I became an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, you can't always be perfect, and you can't always wait for things to become perfect before you get started. Sometimes you got to lay the base, understanding that this mission I'm putting together, everything that I'm working on is not necessarily perfect, and I will perfect it along the way because my experiences are going to allow me to be flexible and continue to tweak, right? It's like playing a sport. If you're playing tennis and you're Coco golf and you keep hitting the tennis ball into the net, then the coach is going to come and give you some pointers. Hey, bend your knees. Don't lean too far to the left. Don't turn your racket over too fast. They're going to give you some tips. That's as you're playing the game. So as you're playing the game of business, others are going to give you tips. You're going to get intel from employees. You're going to get intel from yourself, from your own observation. You're going to learn. The market's going to change. You're going to study. So you can't be trying to be so perfect. See, when you are the corporate person in the corporate world and you're just trying to get the A on the test and get a 5-star rating so you can get your raise, you're not really thinking about how to understand the art of business. You're just trying to make sure you check the box. But some of that you got to be willing to give up when you go into business for yourself. Your website may not be perfect. Your speech may not be perfect. And even if you think it's perfect, I guarantee you it's not perfect, because something can always happen that you know nothing about. That's on the good or bad. So there's no need in worrying about it. Stop worrying, because something can always happen that you know nothing about. You don't have all the solutions to the problem, and you don't know everything. And an entrepreneur understands that. So a maximizing approach, on the other hand, waits for the conditions to be as perfect as possible to minimize potential risk. That's tough, right? You're going to always have risks that come up. Okay? That's why people in the corporate world who come out of corporate, oftentimes, if you're looking to hire somebody, sometimes they're the worst people to hire, because sometimes being in the corporate world can make you lazy, or it can prevent you from honing in on other skills that you need in order to be a good business person. This is why people who come up out of the street, or people with no formal education, oftentimes tend to make more money and do better as entrepreneurs than those of us with all this formal training. Something to think about. All right. Last few things we're going to talk about here is how to assist your assistant. So a lot of us have an assistant, we hire an assistant, and then we just rag on them because they don't do what we want them to do. They don't help us out. We feel like it's too much, but we haven't given them, number one, specific training. And sometimes that's very difficult when we're charting territory that we've never been in before. And so your assistant, you got to help your assistant to understand, or the people who work for you, that, hey, this is something that's never been done before. We are creating as we go, and give them the freedom to make suggestions. Number two, help them establish good relations with the group that you assign them to. Edify them to the group, or prepare the group prepare the assistant, and then define their authority. What is their authority? Because a lot of people get an assistant because they become an assistant, but they trip out. I have this saying where I say, you can take a good employee and make them a bad supervisor because they start tripping. They want to be the boss. But you have to be really clear on defining their authority. You want to be very clear on defining their duties. What are their regular duties? What are the priorities of those duties? What are the emergency duties? Very clear. You want to be very clear on defining their responsibility. Do they share responsibility with somebody else? Do they have full responsibility? Or do they have no responsibility? You want to train them to make decisions. And you want to do that by showing them even your decision-making process, involving them in your decision-making process. Tell them who to see for guidance. But let me also say this, and I've been in situations before where a lot of times people will want to be around you because they just want to peep how you do things. So you want to be mindful of those people that you let into your organization as well, because proper handling of people is like having a patient selection process. So in the outpatient surgery world, everybody is not a candidate for outpatient surgery. You may have too many risk factors, too many comorbidities, so we can't do your surgery in the office, or we can't do your surgery on an outpatient basis. You need to go somewhere where you can spend the night for 3 or 4 days. So you can't have outpatient surgery. This is what's going on with a lot of these plastic surgery situations. A lot of people are not candidates for day surgery. So they go in, they get their liposuction, their tummy tuck or whatever, and they die on the table, or they go home and have complications. But it's because they probably were not a good candidate and the doctor didn't have a good patient selection process, or the patient selection process that they identified was violated. It was broken down. So it's the same thing for you, right? If you want to practice proper handling of people, you're going to have to be focused on trying your best to be around as many conscious entrepreneurs and people and communicate with people so that they have the right mindset. See, when you're dealing with a predator or somebody who's trying to be other, or who is just hell bent on being other than themselves, it's tough. So as bosses, we have to be focused enough and bold enough that if we need to let somebody go, or if we say, hey, you know what, you're just not a fit for this process, or hey, you know what, you're just not ready for this process. See, me, I don't like people who steal. I want to be able to be in the office, and if I leave my bag or my purse or something like that around, then I expect it to be there when I get back. I don't expect you to be poisoning my food. But if I can tell you the kind of person that you're going to be tampering with folks' food, going in the refrigerator, messing with people's stuff, you're going to be taking people's things, taking people's purses, taking folks' wallet, then this environment ain't for you. So when you catch those kind of things, you got to be willing to take action. Otherwise, this strategy that we're putting in place is not going to work when you have somebody who is hell-bent on violating that policy. All right, y'all. So that is episode 4 of Proper Handling of People, and happy Savior's Day. We're celebrating the birth anniversary of our beloved, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Please speak of him and refer to him with reverence and with respect. Be careful with allowing people to drop that reverence around you. Be mindful of that. I was in a meeting one time and somebody kept saying, Elijah Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad. And one of my subcontractors, a Hispanic guy, said, aren't you supposed to be saying Honorable Elijah Muhammad? Because I had taught them that, how we see him with reverence. It's not Brother Farrakhan. It's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, or Minister Louis Farrakhan. It ain't Brother Elijah. It's the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is the reverence with which we speak of these great men. All right, let me see what y'all talking about in the chat. Sister Leisha X said, Happy Savior's Day. Brother Ian said, Long live Muhammad. Raz Noah says, thank you, beloved. You are welcome. Sister Leisha gave some comments. I see y'all with the comments. Brother Lamont said it made a great deal of sense. I see Sister Aletha with the bullseyes here. All right, family. Okay, so thank you all. Make sure you support the completion of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. You can make a donation here, $ Sajdah Enterprises. Brother Victor says, this was definitely great classroom instruction. All praises due to Allah. Make sure you all tune in today, 4 p.m. to NOI.org. There is a webcast celebration on the birth anniversary of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. And inshallah, by next year, we will be having a huge celebration straight from the museum. So go by, take a picture, take a look. We are almost done, and we are just looking for you all to help us get over the edge. And I know y'all tired of hearing me saying it, but one thing about me you're gonna learn, if you don't know nothing else about me, is I'm consistent. And I'm gonna be here, and I'm gonna show up. I'm going to be here every day. I'm going to show up with a certain mindset, and I'm going to ask you to help us get this museum completed. And guess what? Once the museum gets completed, I'm going to ask you to come. I'm going to ask you to support. I'm going to ask you to tell somebody. I'm going to ask you to get on a tour. So our work as preservationists and supporting our history is never done. We have to be intentional about it, and we have to keep going. So, all right. Thank you, family. I see your wonderful comments here. Sister Makeda said, all praises are due to Allah. Brother Lamont said, Happy Savior's Day. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you. Thank you. All praises due to Allah. Thank you and thank you. Thank you, everyone. That's right, Brother Ian. The work don't stop. Okay, family. Happy Savior's Day. Do something wonderful for somebody today. And stay tuned for one more commercial on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House Museum.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that history develops the springs and motives of human action, which display themselves most powerfully in the destiny of man. History actually motivates and stimulates human action. Sometimes you may not know what to expect from yourself. But if you only could read the autobiography of someone from among your people who has achieved, then that tells you what is possible to do. Black people in America have labored without understanding the realm of possibility for black people. And because we don't know what is possible for us as a people to achieve, we labor under the misconception that the accomplishments of Caucasian people should be our guide. And as a result, we keep on trying to be like them rather than trying to be ourselves. This is a result of being robbed of history.